Hello guys, this is a new Reddit crazy story.
Title: The Misunderstood Entitlement. I've been sitting here thinking about something that's been bugging me for a while now. Every time I hear Social Security referred to as an entitlement program, it really hits a nerve. The word entitlement makes it sound like people are receiving something they don't deserve or haven't worked for. And that couldn't be further from the truth. It's not a handout. It's a benefit that we, as workers, have paid into our whole lives. Let me give you a bit of background first. I'm 43, I've been working since I was 18, and I've been contributing to Social Security without fail. Every paycheck I get, a chunk is taken out for Social Security, just like it is for everyone else. I've been paying into this system for 25 years, and I plan on continuing until I retire. So when I hear politicians, pundits, or anyone else in the media refer to it as an entitlement, it's like a slap in the face. Now, don't get me wrong. I get that there are people who need help. There are programs out there designed for those who truly need financial assistance. But Social Security is not one of them. We've been contributing to it for decades. And we all know that it's not an insignificant amount either. I've looked at my pay stubs over the years, and the portion that goes to Social Security is pretty big. At this point, I've probably paid tens of thousands of dollars into it. So, when people talk about Social Security like it's some kind of welfare program that people shouldn't rely on, it feels like they're forgetting the fundamental truth. We've earned it. We've worked for it. The government didn't just give it to us out of the goodness of their heart. It's a system that we've paid into for years with the understanding that, when we get older, or if something happens to us, we can rely on it to some degree. I get it. Social Security isn't perfect. It's a massive program, and I know there are concerns about its future, how long it will last, how sustainable it is, etc. I've heard the horror stories of people not getting their full benefits because of budget cuts or financial instability, and I've read the debates about whether it will be there for future generations. But even with all that uncertainty, one thing's clear. The money we've paid into Social Security isn't some kind of gift from the government. It's something we've earned. Let me share a personal story. A few years ago, my dad had a stroke. It was bad. He couldn't work anymore, and he ended up being permanently disabled. He had paid into Social Security his whole life, and when he reached that point where he couldn't earn a living anymore, guess what? He was able to use the Social Security system. It didn't fix everything. It didn't replace his full income, and it certainly didn't make things easy. But it helped. The money he had put in for years helped cover his medical bills and provided him with something to live on while he navigated this new chapter in his life. Without Social Security, I honestly don't know what we would have done. So, no, it's not a handout, and it's not an entitlement. It's the system working as it was supposed to. Another thing that really irritates me is the way people talk about Social Security as though it's something only old people use. I mean, yeah, that's probably the primary group that benefits from it. But there are a ton of situations where people under 65 use Social Security. Whether it's disability benefits, family survivors benefits, or even people who are just temporarily unable to work, there are tons of ways this program helps people. It's a safety net, not just for senior citizens, but for anyone who's ever worked and paid into the system. I get it. There are a lot of things wrong with the way the government handles money, and I'm not naive enough to ignore the fiscal realities. We all know Social Security isn't in perfect shape, and some people think the system is broken. I've read all the arguments about how we need to fix it. Maybe we do. Maybe the program could use a little bit of an overhaul. But the people who pay into it shouldn't be the ones to suffer just because there's a system-wide issue. Social Security is not just some luxury. It's a lifeline. And don't even get me started on how people use the word entitlement to describe other programs in the social safety net. It's like the term has been hijacked to dismiss anyone who needs help. There's a stigma attached to the word entitlement that paints those who need assistance as lazy or undeserving. That's not fair. Everyone deserves a shot at a decent life. But when it comes to Social Security, it's a totally different story. We're not taking from anyone. We've put our money into the system. It's a contract, plain and simple. It's just frustrating when I see politicians or media pundits frame Social Security as something we should feel guilty about using. They'll say, it's an entitlement and we have to cut it back. But no, that's not how it works. I've earned that money. I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking for the government to honor the contract we've all been a part of. And Honestly, I don't think that's too much to ask. Anyway, I just needed to get this off my chest. I've been reading a lot about how Social Security is being referred to as an entitlement, and it's bothering me more than I can explain. It's time we change the narrative around it. It's not an entitlement. It's a benefit that we, as American workers, have paid for and earned. What do you think? Am I being too sensitive, or does anyone else feel the same way? I'm not sure when it happened, but at some point, Social Security became this dirty word in political conversations. And it gets me every time when I hear people call it an entitlement. The term just makes it sound like I, and millions of other Americans, are begging for a handout. But that's not what Social Security is. It's a program we've all worked for. It's not charity. It's a promise we made when we started working, and it's a promise that the government needs to keep. For context, I'm a 36-year-old woman. I've been working since I was 18, and just like every other American worker, I've had that chunk of my paycheck deducted for Social Security. I've always known that I'm paying into a system that, someday, will pay me back when I need it most, whether that's in retirement, if I become disabled, or for other reasons. And that's fine. I've always thought of it as part of my contribution to the country. But then, one day, I started hearing this phrase, entitlement programs, being thrown around. Politicians use it to describe Social Security, Medicare, and others. The implication is always the same. These programs are something that people are given, something they didn't really earn. It makes it sound like we're mooching off the system, just waiting for handouts. And it's frustrating because it couldn't be farther from the truth. I don't know about you, but when I hear entitlement, it makes me think of people who want something they haven't earned. And that's not what Social Security is. The money that's taken out of my paycheck every month isn't a gift, and it's not a handout. It's part of my paycheck that goes into a system designed to ensure that, when I need it, I have some financial support. Now, I get that there are a lot of critics who argue that Social Security is financially unstable and that it's draining taxpayer money. And I agree that the system could use some reforms. It needs some serious attention if it's going to last for future generations. But that doesn't mean we should start referring to it as something people don't deserve. I've spent a lot of time reading about Social Security, especially after hearing politicians call it an entitlement. It's clear to me that Social Security is a safety net, an insurance program for people who have paid into it. Think about it. It's not like the government is just handing us money. We're all paying into it, and in return, we get back what we've paid, along with a little interest for when we need it. It's an insurance policy. That's all. It's not a favor from the government. It's not welfare. We don't just get to sit back and relax while the government hands us free money. We've worked for it. Let me give you an example of why this matters. My father worked hard his entire life. He was a factory worker who put in his time, paid his taxes, and earned his retirement through the years. When he retired, Social Security was an important part of his income. Without it, he wouldn't have been able to survive. And you know what? He paid into that system every year. So when he received his benefits, it wasn't a gift, it was a return on his investment. That's the thing. Social Security is just that, a return on what we've already put in. It's not some government handout that people should feel ashamed of using. We're entitled to it because we earned it. I can't stress that enough. I'm not some lazy person sitting around waiting for the government to take care of me. I've been paying into that system my entire adult life, and when the time comes for me to need it, I expect to get it. Why? Because I paid into it. That's how it works. I think the problem with the word entitlement is that it misrepresents the nature of Social Security. It turns something that's earned and promised into something people should feel bad about. It makes it seem like the people who need Social Security are taking advantage of the system, and that's just wrong. Social Security is one of the few things in this country that we, as workers, are guaranteed. It's not perfect, and we all know it needs reform, but it's something we've all paid into, and we should be able to count on it. To call it an entitlement is not only misleading, but it's insulting to the millions of Americans who've worked hard, paid their taxes, and contributed to the system. Now, I know there are a lot of arguments about how sustainable Social Security is. We hear about how the trust fund might run dry in the future, how the money isn't being managed well, how there are too many people relying on it, and not enough young workers contributing to it. And yeah, I get that. We should be looking at ways to make the system more sustainable, but that doesn't mean we should start demonizing the people who rely on it. In fact, I think it's important to keep Social Security as a strong, viable program. It's not just about making sure old people have money to retire. It's about ensuring that everyone, regardless of when they're born or what their job is, has a safety net in place when life goes off course. People should feel secure knowing that they have a cushion to fall back on if they lose their job, become sick, or have to retire early. That's what Social Security is about, and calling it an entitlement only undermines that purpose. For me, the bottom line is this. I've worked my whole life, and I'm planning to keep working. Every paycheck, a chunk of my money is going into Social Security. And when I'm old and can't work anymore, I'm going to need that money to live. I shouldn't have to feel guilty about using it, and neither should anyone else. We've earned it. We've paid for it. So, whenever I hear someone call Social Security an entitlement, I just want to scream. It's not an entitlement. It's a contract. It's a promise from the government that if we work hard, contribute to the system, and pay into it, we will be taken care of when we can no longer work. It's not a favor, it's a right. And frankly, I'm tired of people twisting the narrative to make it sound like we're asking for something we don't deserve. To everyone else out there who feels the same way, you're not alone. We've earned our Social Security benefits, and we deserve to be treated with respect, not made to feel guilty for using them when the time comes. Anyone else frustrated by this entitlement narrative? Would love to hear your thoughts.